The woman in white who haunts at Renfrew's Victoria Hospital. It was late October, one of those crisp nights when the air seemed to bite at the skin, hinting that winter was just around the corner. The moon hung low, casting long shadows across the quiet streets of Renfrew. Leaves, dried and brown, rustled gently in the breeze, swirling on the pavement before gathering in forlorn heaps at the foot of the hospital. Renfrew Victoria Hospital stood like a solemn sentinel against the night, its windows dark, save for the occasional flicker of light from the emergency ward. Inside, Nurse Angela Fraser made her rounds. She had worked the night shift for years, and had long since grown used to the eerie stillness that fell over the hospital in the small hours of the morning. The building itself, old and full of history, had its own personality. Its creaks, groans, and sudden cold drafts no longer startled her. Yet, tonight, something felt different. There was an unease in the air, a heaviness that she couldn't quite shake. As she passed the corridor leading to the older wing of the hospital, a chill ran down her spine. Room 213 stood at the far end, in the part of the building that had once been the main ward, but had since been relegated to storage. It was a room few people ventured near, because apparently, according to the conjecture, this area was haunted. The stories whispered in the break rooms and down the halls lingered in Angela's thoughts. The older nurses spoke of the woman in white, a ghostly figure who haunted this wing of the hospital, appearing only in the dead of night. Angela had always dismissed the tales as nothing more than folklore, stories passed down to frighten new staff. Tonight, however, as she approached room 213, she noticed something odd. A faint, flickering light shone from beneath the door. Her breath caught, and she froze mid-step, the soft squeak of her shoes on the linoleum breaking the silence. The room was supposed to be empty. It was now a storage room, and rarely visited by anyone. The key was supposed to be kept locked in the nurse's station, and no maintenance work was scheduled. But tonight there was someone in the room, and the latch was undone? Angela felt the hairs on the back of her neck rise as she slowly approached the door. Her hand hovered over the handle, her mind racing. The stories, could they be true? Could this be the woman in white, returning once again to haunt the place where she had met her untimely end? The details of the tale flooded back to her, the tragic death of a patient in the 1950s, a young woman who had died under mysterious circumstances, her spirit unable to find peace. Swallowing hard, Angela steeled herself and turned the handle. The door creaked open, and a gust of icy air rushed out, making her shiver. The room was dimly lit by the glow of the moon filtering through the window. And there, standing by the window, was the figure, a woman dressed in a long, flowing white nightgown that seemed to shimmer faintly in the pale light. Her back was to Angela, her hair pinned up in a style that looked decades old. She stood perfectly still, gazing out at the courtyard below, oblivious to Angela's presence. Angela's heart pounded in her chest as she stepped into the room. The air was thick with an unnatural cold that made her skin prickle. "Hello?" she called out, her voice barely a whisper. The woman didn't move. Angela swallowed again, her throat dry. "Who are you?" The figure turned slowly, almost mechanically, and Angela gasped. The woman's face was pale, her eyes sunken, and her lips drawn into a thin, sorrowful line. Despite her ghostly pallor, there was an undeniable beauty to her, but it was a beauty marred by an expression of profound regret. Her eyes, dark and hollow, met Angela's, and for a moment the room seemed to close in, the air pressing down like a weight on her chest. "I failed them," the woman whispered, her voice so soft that Angela had to strain to hear it. The words seemed to hang in the air, heavy with despair. Angela's heart ached with an inexplicable sadness. She didn't know who this woman was, or what she had failed to do, but the sorrow radiating from her was palpable. "You didn't fail anyone," Angela said softly, though she wasn't sure why she felt the need to comfort this lost soul. "It's not your fault. You need to let go. Find peace." The woman's form wavered, her edges blurring as though she were fading into the very air around her. The temperature in the room plummeted, and Angela felt her breath condense in front of her, forming small clouds. Instinctively, she began to pray. The words of a prayer she hadn't uttered in years came to her lips unbidden, a simple plea for peace and light, for this tormented soul to find her way to the other side. The ghost's eyes softened as she gazed at Angela, her expression shifting from sorrow to something resembling gratitude. And then, like mist in the morning sun, she was gone. The room grew warmer, the oppressive cold lifting as quickly as it had come. Angela stood there, breathless, her heart still racing. Had it really happened? Had she just encountered the woman in white? In the days that followed, Angela couldn't shake the experience. Every time she passed room 213, she felt a chill, as though the woman's presence lingered just beyond the door. Whispers, barely audible, seemed to drift through the corridors when she was alone, like the ghost was still trying to communicate with her. Weeks later, the unease had only grown. Angela found herself looking over her shoulder, convinced that she wasn't alone. The sensation of being watched became so strong that she could almost feel it, an invisible weight pressing down on her, the hairs on her arms rising with each cold draft that seemed to follow her through the halls. One night, as she made her rounds, she felt something touch her shoulder. It was a cold, unmistakable grip. She spun around, her heart pounding in her chest, but there was no one there. The presence, whatever it was, seemed to intensify after that. Angela caught glimpses of movement out of the corner of her eye, shadows that flitted just beyond her line of sight, vanishing the moment she turned her head. The temperature would drop suddenly, a bone-chilling cold that clung to her, making her shiver uncontrollably. Finally, one night, unable to bear it any longer, she stood outside room 213 and whispered, "Please, let me be. I can't help you anymore." Her voice cracked, the desperation clear. For a moment, the air around her seemed to still, and then, as if in response, the cold that had haunted her for so long lifted. Angela breathed a sigh of relief, her shoulders sagging as the tension drained from her body. The woman in white was gone, or so she hoped. But even now, every so often, when the hospital is quiet and the night grows long, Angela feels a familiar chill in the air, a whisper of a presence that refuses to be forgotten. Is Renfrew's Victoria Hospital still haunted by the woman in white? This ghost tale was produced by Rick J.M. Gauthier, the up-and-coming Canadian author of the Little Ricky the Boy, Little Ricky the Lad, and Little Ricky the Young Man collections of short stories. This ghost story is based upon known facts about hauntings in and around Renfrew. Little Ricky short stories can be purchased from Amazon and Kobo. Amazon has paperbacks and ebooks. Kobo has audiobooks. If you buy a short story, all proceeds are donated to a food bank. Books are not expensive. Some are as low as $6. Consider helping Rick get established as an author by supporting him with a purchase and a review. Consider helping Rick to feed the hungry.